Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As always, it is I, Buck of the Books, welcoming you back to yet another episode of Buck's Books. We're on sort of a time crunch today, so we'll skip the foreplay and move directly into the intro. Today I'd like to talk about People of the Lie, The Hope for Healing Human Evil by M. Scott Peck, M.D. Dr. Peck comes out swinging for the fences, and he presents the idea that eventually everyone who works in social services is going to stumble across, though it may take some longer than others, that while most things can be fixed with therapy, some people are just irredeemably evil. What are you supposed to do with that? It's 2025. We're a deeply secular and liberal society. There's no such thing as evil. Evil is witchcraft talk. Evil is antiquated morality play fluff. We can't really be walking into this thing like it's one of the innumerable horrible Marvel movies, right? It's like this is the new Avengers, right? Or even further back, we're we're actually doing the dichotomous thinking with God and the devil. Like that's ridiculous. We're too modern for that. We're too civilized for that. We'd like to be. we would, but what Dr. Peck is talking about are the people who are irreconcilably evil, and that is typically the result of not understanding that it's evil and refusing to recognize that anything is wrong, let alone fix it. So he talks about these people as foremost lazy and narcissistic. And that is his template for evil. I've heard other templates for evil. The best one I had heard up until this book was the concept that evil people do harm to others for selfish reasons without caring about its impact, which fits the narcissistic, Peck expands that to talk about how it stems from typically laziness. So he talks about how they are deceptive, greedy, self-absorbed, slothful, and they refuse to acknowledge their own failures, instead projecting their evil onto others, projecting scapegoating whoever's nearby, right? So that is the fundamental basis of evil. Laziness, inability to confront difficulty, unwillingness to try. As soon as the going gets tough, they give up. So what do they do with that giving up? Well, some of them double down into this telegraphed victimhood, and some of them, most of them, blame the world at large. It's society's fault. It's my family's fault. It's my partner's fault. It's my workplace's fault. It's my school's fault. It's capitalism's fault. It doesn't matter what you pick, so long as you have a place to assign blame. And that's one of the fundamental components of Peck's evil. You have to be able to blame something, because that way you are just absolved. So these people, the people of the lie, they make an entire personality out of this concept. They take the idea that they can shift and reassign any blame for anything that happens, because obviously it's not anything they do. This just happened by accident. How could this have happened? Anything that happens, right? And then they can assign the blame somewhere else, and they blame their spouse, and they blame their own children, and they blame anyone in their radius, in their blast radius, right? It doesn't matter. And sometimes they'll even try to punish the person for their transgressions, their imagined transgressions, and that's what makes it evil, right? So in Peck's understanding, evil has two limbs, right? And one is laziness and one is unwillingness to recognize reality. I find it difficult to locate any flaw in Peck's reasoning. I read another book once. This is stupid. stupid name about being a poet warrior. I don't remember. It was unexpectedly Christian. I remember that. But it talks about how there are classes of evil, and one is just willfully. One is evil for evil's own sake. One is like the Joker. They go all the way in on it. But the one that's more dangerous than that are the ones who are evil because they are personally weak. Because they can excuse anything. They can walk away from doing absolutely anything. There's no low that's too low. There's nowhere they won't sink. Because they're always going to have the ability to regather the moral high ground thereafter, because they were just too limited to do anything about it. They were forced into this situation by circumstance. It's not what they would have wanted, but they just couldn't help it. They couldn't stop it. There's nothing they could have done to stop it. And those people are the most dangerous, because they will do those are the Nazis that are just following orders. Those are the pedophiles who have something wrong with my brain. Those are the people who do evil, knowing it's evil, and excuse themselves for the evil after the fact, and then try to manipulate you into excusing their evil after the fact. It's different from the first guy. It's different from the Joker guy, Carnage, who just loves it and doesn't care what you think. That's sociopathy. That's all for one. That's not. They're not worried about convincing you of anything. They're just having a good time. This other evil, they'll get away with it. Over and over again, they'll get away with it if you're not watching for it, right? So that's the evil that Peck is talking about. And he also talks about, it's very strange to see coming from a psychiatrist, because he's talking about the visceral response that he has to people when he encounters them as real evil. One of the anecdotes is the one kid kills himself, right? Shoots himself with a rifle. He has a little brother. The little brother is brought in for therapy a few months later because he's depressed and withdrawn and not doing his chores and struggling in school. So, again, he's a kid. He's a teenager. He's like 13 or something like that. So Peck's talking to him, and he just seems depressed. Yeah. Your older brother killed himself a couple weeks ago. Of course you're depressed. You should be depressed. That's an appropriate response. But the parents are the ones who brought him in for counseling, because this is just unacceptable. So Peck brings in the parents for a separate session, and he's talking to them, and they're immediately standoffish. And for some reason, Peck is just getting this visceral feeling of revulsion from them. Like when he's talking to them, like on a level in his soul, he's just, his skin is crawling. Once again, those who work in the human services will recognize this feeling. This is not uncommon. So he's trying to identify what it is about these people. He's chalking it up to his own internal bias. Maybe they remind me of teachers I had or something like that. Who knows, right? So he starts to pick at their story, to try to figure out what happened. And they are immediately defensive about everything he says. And whenever he tries to ask them a probing question, it's like, well, we're not here for therapy. This therapy's for our son. So he weathers that, and eventually he finds out that after the kid kills himself with his rifle, the younger brother's birthday was a couple of weeks later. And for his birthday, the parents, unable to get to the store to get him a present of his own, give him the rifle. Happy birthday. Here's the rifle that your brother killed himself with. It's yours now. So this kid, 13, he's already blaming himself for his brother's death. He's already in that guilt trap, where it's like, I could have done more. I could have done something to save him. his parents aren't even taking time off work. They're not even taking the bereavement because there's money to be made. So they're just plugging right along, and they pass this on to him. So this poor kid. Oh, and self-harm. He was self-harming too. So, of course, he's reacting in this way. He blames himself, and he has no authority figures around him with their wherewithal to recognize what's going on. More to the point, they refuse to look at it. So they're just pushing it onto him. Literally pushing the gun, the not murder weapon, but the suicide weapon onto him. And that's what Peck said is evil. Was it willful? No, but it doesn't matter if it's willful. And that's the important part to understand about Peck's definition of the people of the lie. That is the lie. The lie is what allows them to perpetuate evil, because they believe their lie, even as they know it started as a lie. They convince themselves. It's denial. It's delusion. Right? And that's what they weaponize their delusion to the end of. Here's a quote from Peck from the book. Utterly dedicated to preserving their self-image of perfection, the evil are unceasingly engaged in the effort to maintain the appearance of moral purity. They worry about this a great deal. They are acutely sensitive to social norms and what others think about them. They dress well, go to work on time, pay their taxes, and outwardly seem to live lives that are above reproach. While they seem to lack any motivation to be good, they intensely desire to appear good. Their goodness is all on a level of pretense. It is, in fact, a lie. That is why they are the people of the lie. I wonder, what do evil people who intensely desire to appear good do on Sunday morning? Right? Which is how he segues over into talking about the church, and it's the perfect smokescreen. The church is ideal because these people are compelled to want to look good. It's all about appearances. It's all about what the other people think of them, so long as they don't know the truth, because they themselves won't even recognize the truth. Right? So, of course they're going to church. And of course they're tithing as little as they can get away with. Or, if someone's watching them, as much as they can be seen. And of course this gives them the moral superiority to say, well, I'm a church-going man. How could you think such a thing of me? All the way down the board. And interestingly, at the tail end of the book, he starts talking about actual demons. And exorcisms. And he never doubles down and says that, people are evil because of demons, but you can tell he kind of thinks it. And look, fellas, I'm going to level with you. Once you encounter real evil, right? Not just a boyfriend that you think is a narcissist, or someone who's selfish, or something like that, or someone who knew that I wanted that promotion, but they went for it anyway. I mean, real evil. We're talking dead-eyed sociopath, flagrant, irredeemable narcissist evil. The kind of evil that isn't ever going to heal, right? When you encounter that in the wild, especially if you do it sustainedly, especially if it happens often, you're going to be hard-pressed to not think of it as demonic intervention. It's going to be difficult for you. Even if you're deeply secular. Even if you're a staunch and spiteful Richard Dawkins atheist. Because it's going to be so counter to your understanding of the way social mores work that your more primitive mind, the storytelling animal that we talked about, right? Man is the spiritual animal. The Jungian part of your mind is going to desperately grasp for an explanation for why someone could be like that. And the only one that's going to make any sense is demonic possession. There's another entity specifically engineered by a dark force to be selfish and destructive. Because that's the only way. And that's the thing. That's the thing about these evil people. When I used to live in Philadelphia, and this is unrelated, but it's a good way to, illustrate the point. When I used to live in Philadelphia, I used to have to drive around because I commuted for a while. And when I did that, what you have to understand about Philadelphia is every single person on the road is trying to kill you. They want you to die. It's not personal. It's nothing to do with you. Right? And I would get livid just trying to survive this Mad Max wasteland, especially around the Wawa parking lots. Oh my God. So I would get my blood pressure all the way up and I'd be ready to climb out of the car and just pull them apart like a Wookiee, you know? And I realized one day as I was getting pointlessly worked up, the punishment for being a Philadelphian is being a Philadelphian. Yeah, they're making me mad right now, but like, where are they going and what are they doing, you know? I was able to project, to weaponize my empathy and recognize that the lives that they live, whatever they're on their way to do, is way worse than what I gotta do in a given day. And that's why they're so horrible, right? This is also true of the people of the lie. They're not doing good. They're not doing good. And the reason they're not doing good is not because they're evil, but it's because they're stupid. If you look at the structure of the evil that we just laid out, it requires you to deny reality, right? That's what Peck's evil is. It is a complete denial of reality as a means of saving face, of protecting your own ego. No, it's not my fault. It's everyone else's fault. It's everything else's fault. This can't possibly be me. I pretend I do not see it. I'm just not going to look at it, right? In conjunction with the profound laziness, and that can sometimes be a personal laziness. It doesn't just mean a laziness, the psychological perspective, the kind of laziness a psychiatrist would talk about, which is like the unwillingness to do the emotional work of recognizing where your problems come from, but rather a true, like, just laying around all day and groaning laziness, you know, of descending into the oblivion of frequent substance abuse to keep you just good and not present. These are all the lazinesses he's talking about in conjunction with the denial and unwillingness to recognize the situation around them in reality, to be able to actually pinpoint what cause and effect is. So if you're going through life disbelieving in the concept of cause and effect to protect your ego so you never get to recognize the problems that you're causing, so you never have to face the consequences or even the guilt, because a lot of these evil people, they have functional systems of guilt and shame. They're in there. Like, they still have a soul. It's just broken. It's perverted. Because when we're talking about people without a soul, we're talking about people without a conscience. And the only people who are truly without a conscience are sociopaths. And generally speaking, that's a stupid number, like 1 out of every 100 people. So it's very low. It's very unlikely that you're going to encounter a sociopath. And they usually get caught for being reckless and dumb, for not jiving with societal mores to the point where they can't keep up the charade anymore. But there's nothing they can do. Like, they're not going to change it. The best you can do is reprogram them to recognize that this is not in your best interest, so you got to do something else, right? And there's a great book on that called Inside the Criminal Mind. It's phenomenal. It's one of my favorite psych books. I would highly recommend it. But most of the people that Peck is calling evil, they aren't sociopaths. Their system works. They just designed it not to work correctly. They just took pieces out to make sure that they never have to deal with what the guilt or shame are from. You know, it's not about like in a rational. So let's take shame out of it, because shame is sort of a useless concept that develops when guilt just runs wild for too long, right? Shame is hating who you are, what you are, but you can't fix what you are. That develops because guilt had been on your plate for so long, you just didn't eat it. You know, you didn't address the fact that it needed to be resolved. And guilt is when you do something that you should feel bad about. Guilt is when you do something maladaptive, or do something antisocial. But if you just have guilt and don't correct your behavior about the guilt, don't change anything about the guilt's not going to go away. And these evil people, they just lie around and like, oh, I feel so bad about myself all the time for no reason. I think it's just my depression. But like, dude, some people just get depression. Some people have life circumstances that are horrible that make them feel like they have depression. And some people cultivate it like a bonsai tree. All right? And that's what you're doing. If you're going out of your way, if you're doing all this bad stuff, if you're justifying doing all of this horrible, antisocial, maladaptive stuff, and then you feel guilt about it, which is appropriate, and then you're like, I don't know why I feel so bad. I think it's just because I need more drugs. Then that's evil, dude. That's what you're describing as evil. And it's never, ever, ever going to get any better. You're never going to heal. There's no healing for you to do because you're convinced that everything is great. So that's the kind of mentality that Peck was able to sort of tie into the concept of demonic possession and religious exorcism, which sometimes works, but in the case, it's a placebo effect thing, but it's convenient because it cashes in on that pre-existing mental structure that says nothing is my fault. So yes, I'm horrible. Yes, I feel bad all the time. Yes, I say terrible things to the people around me, but it's because I have a demon. So everyone's going to come in and tell me how much they love me and pay attention to me and sprinkle me with water, and I'm going to yell and thrash around, and then the demon's going to leave, and then I can try a do-over. And sometimes they try a do-over because sometimes they recognize, okay, this has gone so far that they think I have a demon. So something's got to give. But most of the time, that won't happen. Because most of the time, the entire personality disorder has been built around the idea that it's everyone else's fault. And all they have to do to fix it is nothing, because there's nothing they can do, because it's not their fault. All they can do is bravely soldier on. And those are the people of the lie. It was a really good book. I would highly recommend it to anyone interested in anything that I just said. Peck's a good writer. He's sort of an iconoclast in the community because he talks about demonic possession in a psychology book. But even if you don't go in for all that, and I'm still undecided on to whether or not I do, because like I said, demons are horror movie stuff. That's goofy. But at the same time, when you see what evil looks like, you know, when you look into the face of evil, especially on a regular basis, and see what it's capable of, at some point you're going to have a hard time being like, well, that's just what humans do. That's human nature. No, dude. Human nature is when the chimpanzees take bananas from one another. This is the stuff that these evil people do through their negligence. This is like leaving the babies in the hot cars. You know, this is stuff that's fundamentally in conflict with our most direct animal natures, our pre-programmed factory standard drives. And the evil that we're talking about is so selfish that it defies even those. It defies not even what makes us human, but what makes us animals, right? It will be very difficult when you actually see this in real life. It will be very difficult to not think that it's demons. Okie dokie. Like I said, time crunch, and this has already gone on too long. Are you incensed? Are you riding to the defense of the evil for some reason? Perfect. Do it in the comments. Now's your chance. Like, follow, subscribe, comment, all of it. See you soon.